Angel Heart Radio programs should not be used to replace your legal or medical advice, nor your own sound judgment. In truth, nothing can dim your magnificence. You are a divine spark, a universal light. You are here on purpose. You are part of a divine plan, and it's our joy to support you. We're here to celebrate you. Welcome to Angel Heart Radio. Powered by love, Angel Heart Radio is brought to you by AngelLight777.com. Great news, everyone. Angel Heart Radio is now live streaming on our Facebook page, and we have a fully searchable, brilliant podcast platform for you at angelheartlisten.com.
Welcome, everyone, to Angel Heart Radio. This is Speaking with Angels on Angel Heart Radio. And before I introduce my guest, there is something that the angels want us all to hear. Our angels are listening to our heart song. They hear our cries for help, our laughter, and our every need. When we reach out our hand, they take it under their wings to a place where only love resides. They wait patiently while we open our hearts to them. Will you open your heart tonight as they speak to you through perhaps a message or a word that comes through from myself or my guest? My wonderful guest tonight is Pauline Crawford-Omps, and I hope I'm saying that right, Pauline.
Yes.
She is a life adventurer, a magical conversations change maker, and a future designer. My passion, she says, is to enlighten people, men and women of all nations, ages, diversities, and talents, to enjoy their lives, bring their natural gifts to the fore, become aware of the connections they create in words and deeds for the life balance of their business and personal dreams. Pauline designed a gender dynamics map to help all of us understand and value differences so that in all situations, we bring knowledge, experience, and imagination together to seed a future yet unknown with love, respect, and trust together. Pauline, I just love that. Welcome to Angel Heart Radio.
I am absolutely delighted to be here, Teri. I so love the angels that have been in my life all my life, and you're one. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I am so honored that I got to meet you and that you said yes, that you would come on and let everybody just experience some of what you have to offer. I am so enthralled about these magical conversations. And I want everyone to know more about this, because to me, it's what we need right now in our world, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's so fascinating how the world is evolving at the moment. And I think we've always need magical conversations, but as you say now, even more than ever. And I think I've always been in magical conversations all my life. I mean, probably as a kid, I was known as a bit of a chatterbox, but it wasn't needless chatter. It was always interested in conversation. I was interested in why sometimes conversation flowed and other times it didn't flow. You know, sometimes we'd have tea parties where there'd be maybe a rather pedantic uncle who would stop the conversation with some great judgment, and you'd feel the energy change in the room. And I think I thought about that all my life, and I just love to be in conversation. I'm a great connector. So as this evolved, it was around 2008, I was really studying people in business. You know, why do some businesses work and others don't? Why did some people have good conversations and why did men and women not always get on well? And I must have been doing something right. I don't know what it was, but my daughter, I think I had solved something for her. And she said, "Oh, Mummy, you're the president of Magical Conversations." And I said, "Oh, darling, that's so sweet." And I said, "Well, president sounds a bit grand." So I decided I would call myself the ambassador of Magical Conversations. And I would just try out this energy with my clients. And I went and got a card made. So it was just, all it said was my name, and it had a very scrolly kind of ambassador type. And I went to a party, a networking event. It was all women, but I got a very good response. And a lot of people said, oh, you know, what's that? Even without explanation, that's what I thought was magical. So even without an explanation, people were drawn to the idea. And then I went to another networking where there were very serious men and women, lawyers actually. And a client of mine, female, came across and said, oh, hello, da, 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 da. And she turned to her husband, who was a lawyer, and said, is it Pauline? And she is the ambassador of magical conversations. And I have to say, at that moment, my heart stopped, and I thought, I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. And never make assumptions, which is one of the guidelines in my book. Don't make assumptions. Because he turned around and he said, fantastic. That's exactly what we need in the law, because we get so serious. And it was a real revelation to me. So I've expanded on that over the years. And one of the most amazing magical conversations I had was actually with my now American husband, who I met in Budapest some 9 years ago now. And we were at a conference which was actually extremely boring, but we were obviously meant to meet there because I came from London, he came from Las Vegas, and we met in Budapest. Neither of us wanted to be there. This was a particularly, it was just a business conference, and excuse me, and we just kind of clicked. We got on, and never, you know, obviously there was no hanky panky, but we just tuned into each other. We were only there for like a day and a half, but we had a magical conversation over breakfast. So let me explain what it is. It's when a conversation flows, there's no pullback, you know. And even with somebody who was totally new, we literally just met, and we were sitting talking over breakfast in the main restaurant. And I happened to go in there just as he was sitting there. And it was a very informative conversation. And he's quite a quiet man. And he said at the end, he said, how come you got me saying all those things? And I think it's to do with creating the intention. So the first thing about magical conversation is you set an intention that it will be a magical flow. And flow is really important. It's not staccato. It's not, so what do you do? I do this, you do that. Do you think this? There's an inquisitiveness, but a non-invasiveness of delight and compliment and sharing of information. And there's also no anger. So in my stylized magical conversations, which I do in the business world, the second rule after the, you know, no judgments is actually no anger, because we've got a lot of anger at the moment in the world. And I say to people, you can bring passion, enthusiasm, but not anger, because anger gets to this. Anger gets to an abrasiveness. And then the third part of the magical conversations, remember, no judgment, no anger, is what I call no coercion, no trying to control the outcome. You know, because that's another thing that we have a tendency to do, especially in business. Okay, you know, some people don't like to chatter as much, or some men maybe think that, you know, a flowing emotional conversation is not part of business. Emotion is now part of business, and a magical conversation is definitely emotional, but it's also what I would say soulful. It's a space of soulful expression where you can share without somebody biting you back and saying, no, 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 no. And the ultimate magical conversation is to be able to share some things that maybe other people in the circle won't agree with, but you come with your experience and it's accepted as part of the flow. So, you know, that expression, you know, we'll agree to disagree, but the part of the magical conversation which is joyful is that you contribute, but you listen. You contribute, but you listen. You tune in, you flow. So it's not a static process. It's very much a flow. And that's where the magic comes, because as we know, magic, you know, when you watch a fantastic magician and they do something and you're going, no, 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 that's not possible, but I've just seen it happen. And it's making the unbelievable believable. And I just believe that we have an opportunity now in the world to not get into these violent arguments, which are very divisive and very polarized, and actually only have one conclusion, which is to fight. And I think, you know, fighting and violence is very wasteful as well as cruel. So that is that the magical conversation can happen all the time, or it can be created as a space of intentional conversation, because we still sometimes need to come outside of magical conversations and deal with transactional conversations and conflicts and things like that. So it's a particular additional energy, and I hope it will heal the world. That's my dream.
Oh, mine too, Pauline. I'm right there with you on that. Yeah, because a lot of times when you're holding conversation and the other person does have an opposing viewpoint, it turns into this like ping pong thing. So I understand what you're saying about being in the flow and just letting it happen.
Yes.
And that's how I do all of my shows. Everything that I do, I hold conversation instead of, you know, trying to pull information out or, you know, get the different views. I just love when there's a flow of energy. It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks. But
oh, yes.
Abraham teaches, you know, if you're struggling, then you're going upstream. You're not going with that flow of the current. And when you're having a conversation, it sounds like it's this way with magical conversations. You're just flowing with the current and
you are
taking whatever comes.
That's right. And I think there's also, I hope and believe there's a very constructive side to it as well, because this third part, which is don't try and coerce action in a time period. So that's very important. Even a social setting is that there are people who do want action. So what I do is I make a deliberate ending of the magical conversation, and often in a constructive one, even a social one, if it's about a topic. I did many in Malaysia when I lived there. We'd actually mind map everything that people say, and then we'd have a closure of that part, time for coffee, lunch, whatever. And then we go back and look at the mind map and say, oh, hey, that's interesting, because it's a very creative process as well. And I found every time I did it, I was thinking, yeah, I'd never thought about that. Hey, yeah, that's good. So I think that we need this pause that we've got now with the pandemic. We need to really look at what we can create. And I'm very passionate about creating our future together, which is something I do online. Is if we rush too quickly to whatever it is we think it is, or we desperately want to go backwards, which I don't, we're going to lose the essence of this pause, because this is the seeding time. This is the time to seed ideas and share and understand what everybody's different view of the future is. You know, I'm not supposing that my view as a British woman living in the US, I'm a grandma and a mom, and, you know, I've done lots of things in my life that a 20-year-old hasn't done, who may not even come from the UK or the US. And we have to respect differences and really get to like them, even if they may be very diverse from us. That's the magic of the kaleidoscope of human difference.
That's magic. Yes, it certainly is. And I'm so right there with you. During that time when we were told just sit, you know, just don't go out and about, don't do any of that, just be. I thought, you know, there's two ways we can handle this. We can just like, you know, rebel against it and fight and struggle about, you know, complain about everything, or we can go inward and take that time to really look. So every day I would journal, and I would encourage, you know, anybody that I spoke with online, journal what it is that you want it to be like when you come out of this. Are there changes that you want to see in yourself? Because that's where the change has to happen. It has to start inside.
But don't you think it's so interesting that many people don't understand what being intentional is? Because I often say to people, look, it's actually much more easy to be intentional than set expectations. Because when you set expectations, sometimes when you don't make them, you kind of get annoyed. But an intention, it's just not just, but it's an intention. Therefore, it will always happen. Maybe not exactly as you think it will be. That's an expectation. But as you and I know, the angels are hearing our messages in the ways that are not our earthly ways. And I think it's taken me some time. I wouldn't say I've been like this all my life, although I've always been fairly positive, but really looking for signs. You know, why did I go to that conference in Budapest? I really didn't want to go. It was a cold winter night. It was actually Thanksgiving Day, but it didn't mean anything to me because I was British. So I just didn't want to go. It was a very cold November. And I got persuaded to go. And in fact, Jim got persuaded to go. And you go, okay, so who was orchestrating that we should meet there? And if I hadn't got on the plane or he hadn't, then something else would have happened. But you trust in the magic of what's presented to you. It's almost like having a magical conversation with the science about around us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And being open to seeing them. That's a big part of it too.
Oh, yes. And really, certainly in today's world where everything is so uncertain, is adjusting our frame of life completely. And I think that's, you know, it sounds traumatic, but, you know, the world is collapsing. And sometimes we need it to collapse in order to grow afresh. And if you think about a farmer, you know, a farmer over plows his field, it's not going to keep on growing. He has to remember to go and plow another field. And you know, we can't keep on digging over all the old stuff if it's not working. And okay, you remember the line and you read about me, using your knowledge, experience, and imagination. It's the mantra for the education university that my husband and I run. So your knowledge is what you know, and that's not just what you learned at school. Your experience is everything that's ever happened in your life, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. But your imagination is free. You know, you can use your imagination, and how many people don't? And it's partly our society, the systems. I think we've doused some of our imagination. I mean, let's not get into education, but
yeah,
we've all got an imagination. And it's not just the priority of, you know, an artist or you know, I think a lot of people think, oh, no, I'm not talented, or I'm not this, I'm not that. No, everybody is born with talent, with gifts, and their imagination. It's free.
Just love that. Prince Fleet Easton is watching, and he made the comment, it falls apart to come together at a higher level.
Oh, yes. And Prince, I totally adore him. He's wonderful. And
me too.
Yes, and he's definitely an angel. And in fact, I interviewed him for my series, Men of the Future Now, because I did that over 2018, 19. And I asked a lot of men about men, you know, what's going on for men today? And Prince was one of those. And thank you, Prince, for that. But I do think what he's saying is that we need to go within, but we need to come out and see the collective. And I think we've had a few decades of a lot of ego development, haven't we? You know, I mean, and I don't know, those of us who've been through the personal development world, we've walked on coals and done all the sort of, you know, hurrah stuff. I've done that as well, but it's actually about much more reflective process now. Who am I? Why am I who I am? But what am I as part of the whole? And what is the whole? What is unity? And okay, 8.5 billion people in the world. We can't get hold of everybody, but you know, I believe that there's an increasing percentage of people becoming much more conscious. The consciousness is rising about me and inside, but also me as part of the unity. And I love simultaneous equations. I'm a mathematician. For me, it's very common sense to know who I am and who am I as part of the whole. So whether it's a one-on-one friendship or it's a group relationship, I'm into that equation at the same point. And it may be because I was born into a very happy family. I was the middle child of 4. I was the third of 4. And I always had somebody around me. I was always kind of connected. You know, I was at school, I was always in the middle of a whole crowd of people. And I think it's what my gift is to understand that. But as a world, we need to balance our individual needs with our collective needs. And the other thing I think about the whole idea of magical conversations and consciousness and awareness is we really need to honor our differences. I keep on coming back to that. We are who we are. And if we're going to be angry, it doesn't matter what diversity you are, you're angry. So, people talk about
honor the anger too.
Yeah. I mean, people talk about toxic masculinity or toxic femininity and go, no, it's just toxic. Like,
it's just toxic. Yeah.
And do you want it? Do you want it, or do you want to get rid of it? It's like, but it needs a conversation. And right. I think even a conversation about, I remember having this with a group of students in a London university that I lectured at. I said, okay, what is bad behavior? And we discussed that, it was the obvious things like it's bad to kill somebody or hurt somebody, etc. And then somebody said, well, I think it's bad behavior to turn up late for a meeting. And all the other kids kind of laughed at them. I said, no, but if that's your standard and your principle, at the point when somebody defaults that's in your terms is bad behavior. But having a conversation with a group and saying, look, the way we present ourselves in blah, 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 one of them is being punctual. That may be one of your principles. So I think we've got to look at what are the principles for creating our future together. What is it we want? And not everybody will want the same things. So
right.
therein lies our challenge.
But that's the beauty of diversity too.
Yeah. And that's what I'm exploring with some current magical conversations with groups of people about. So if you could paint your future picture, what would it look like? What does it look like for baby boomers? What does it look like for millennials? What does it look like for young single mums or businessmen? I mean, there's so many groups, but if we could paint all those pictures, I wonder what the common thread is. And I would hope that it's love, respect, and trust.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But the ultimate respect is that it would be different for all of those people.
Well, even saying some of those words, that means different things to different people. And you would think, something like love, you would think everybody understands what love is, but not everybody does. Everybody has a different experience with love. So they're going to come maybe from a different place with it. So it's finding those commonalities, I think, is the key. Can we find a common ground there?
And this is where conversation comes into it, is that there are prejudices out there, are biases, there are very sad experiences that some people have had. I've been very blessed in my life that I did get divorced and there was trauma there, but I haven't had deep, ravishing trauma in my life. So I'm very fortunate, but that's my blessing. I'm not going to apologize for that. But we do need to understand people at one level, but also invite them to be part of the new future, because everybody has value. And I believe that really, really thoroughly. Sometimes people will challenge me and say, well, there are some people who are evil. Yes, maybe. But, where has that come from? Then that's a conversation about what is it we want in the world? What is it? How does that future come? And I don't know the answers. I'm not saying I do. Yeah. But if we provide the space to regularly have magical conversations and we gain more understanding about gender dynamics, for instance, is the core diversity that I look at, because it's fundamental to life, to the feminine and masculine energy together, the male and female, the 360-degree look at those issues, which in many ways is about parenting our world. And I don't necessarily mean as a man and woman together, but just all of us understanding that we're designing this world. And I know a lot of people would disagree with me and say, oh, the government's doing it or whatever. But essentially, I believe we're invited by the universe, by everything that is, to take a completely new look. And love is the core, not fear. And that, as you know, is the core conversation. That is the core magical conversation.
Yes.
But one of the things I do love and I'm really passionate about is that with my gender map, I would love everybody to just understand the core of why men and women are different and why different types of men, different types of boys, different types of women, different types of girls exist. And if you go into the playground, so let's keep it very simple, because you know most of what happens to change us happens after we go to school. But you go in the playground and you can see not all the boys are the same and not all the girls are the same, and they have masculine and feminine energy in different amounts. And that's really the simplicity of what I've created. Is I'm looking at what are the two main operating platforms that men and women have, boys and girls, and then what are the masculine and feminine energies that turn up in behavioral terms, and how does that impact? Definitely, how does it impact family? But I'm very focused on how does it impact business, because I think if we can get our economy right, that will also help. But having that awareness, I would hope, would get us away from the biases that are causing the problems in the first place. That makes sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And you teach this, right?
I teach
You teach this gender, what is it called? Dynamic gender
dynamics map.
Gender dynamics map.
And it started because I was looking at why am I different to my other sisters who were different to me, my actual sister, but also my sisters. And I was, after having my kids, I was at home for a few years and I wanted to do something to do with dressmaking and design. And I became an image consultant. And in that process, I really got to understand human bodies. Sounds strange, but I was watching these different bodies and dressing them in colors and shapes. And I thought, that's really interesting. The ones who are more like my shape, they're all more masculine energy and logical. And all the ones who are not my shape, who are softer and curvier, they're all more feminine. And I looked at the men and I found the same. And I thought, well, this is interesting. There's a core difference between men and women, yes. But there's also this other element. And what's fascinating is that the masculine and feminine energy is actually the driver for attraction in heterosexual relationships and in homosexual and in trans relationships. It actually covers the whole spectrum, because the masculine and feminine energy is in addition to our biology. So the biology has sort of one layer, and then these energies are coming out in behavior, but you can see them in our physicality. And that's what I spotted when I was in the image world. The women who were like me were, and I'm talking about the structure of our skeleton. I've got a much straighter body shape. I have a bottom and boobs and things, but I stand straight, I feel straight, I like straight. And the more softer feminine shapes, often like softer, gentler shapes and images. And this reflects how we move and flow in our world. And what's happened with the business world is it forced us all to think about being too straight and being more fierce in order to come into business. And now that's all changed, not just because of the pandemic, but because already in the last decade, more and more women were coming out and saying, hey, we're pretty good at business, but we want to do business different. So I have a lovely metaphor, which I think you'll like, Teri, is I look at men as bears and women as birds. So the bears are because men essentially are more singular minded. They often stronger. They're like the bear, you know, they want to be big and strong, but some are grizzly bears and some are cuddly bears. So that's your masculine energy. Right. And then women are birds. We're very flexible. We fly in and out. We're circular. We like to nest, you know. But some birds are big eagles, others are macaws, but we're birds of many feathers, and we like that colorful, multitasking, circular, nurturing, emotional relationship. And we get together with bears. We're good with each other, but we have different traits. And this is where the bear's learning to understand the bears as a lovely little story that the bear was going out for a walk one day with the bird because they had been tasked to go and find a water hole. They needed water for their community. So they're going on, the bear knows exactly where it's going. Yes. And the bird's kind of going, no, I know it. And then he gets very tired because he can't find it. She said, just sit down and wait, let me go. And of course she flies off and she's got a much more
higher view. Right.
So she goes, there's the water. It's actually only a short way away, but he would never find it on that other path. So she comes back, shares the news with the bear, and they find the water. But that's kind of metaphor for what we can do, which is complementary together, because we have different baseline traits, we have different things to come together. And as we have magical conversations, we can, as principally, we can lift the conversation where we acknowledge all those different strengths, and we make a different result, a different future. That's it.
We do, and it's all about collaboration.
All about collaboration, and understanding that if you have a magical conversation and you put collaboration in the middle, we need to listen to everybody's point of view, because there will be different versions of what collaboration means to somebody.
But honoring each other's opinions, honoring that, you know, we're different, we look different, we sound different, we have different gifts and talents, but we're all the same. And when we get into that like-minded mindset, we're all the same. We all want survival, right?
Yes.
So we can start with basics and then see where we can complement each other with our gifts, with our individual talents. But it's bringing it to that core connection of, you know, what do we want?
That's right.
And I think that's the main thing right now for all of us. What do we want?
Well, that's it. And one of the things we could do is to recognize that we're complementary, i.e. we've all come together, but to make sure we complement each other. You know, it's so simple to put in that extra gratitude, you know, oh, you did that really well, thank you for doing that. You know, even if it's something that's the run of the mill, you know, it's that extra energy of the compliment. And I think certainly in business, there's some businesses which had forgotten that. And I think another output of the pandemic and lockdown and social is that we suddenly realize that life is important. And when somebody sadly has passed on, they can't come back. And we don't want that. So I think it's such an important time for us, Teri, this time of pause.
It is. And gratitude, like you said, gratitude changes everything.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, we're not all perfect. You know, some days I forget and I think, oh, no, put that extra thing in, you know, put smiles at the end of all my emails, you know, put bless you somewhere, you know, just all the time, keep on rippling out words of kindness, and it will change. I mean, I do believe there is a rise of consciousness in the world, which is going to shift everything. But if we organized it and made it, I don't know, a consciousness network and had to pay our dues, you know, it wouldn't work. It's got to just flow with trust that if you and I are having this conversation, then there are millions of these conversations happening somewhere in the world. That's my sort of statistical mind, you know, it's happening everywhere. So I always imagine, oh gosh, I wonder if there's another magical Pauline having this conversation in Guatemala or Iceland, you know, and then you find somebody is and you go, hey, that is cool.
It's awesome. It's an awesome thought. And as we said earlier, you know, you stated in the conversation earlier about intentions.
Yes.
Intentions are everything. They are so important. So putting the intention out there that there's going to be magical conversations, that there's going to be more people awakening to what's real, you know, what is important in our world. And then starting to have those conversations, starting to collaborate with other people and bring more to the forefront about, gratitude, about joy, about love. And it's going to make a difference. And I know this in my heart that it's going to make a difference.
It is. And I think it's really, and I think I've always believed this, but not necessarily worded it that way, but it is all about energy. And I talk a lot about synergy, because that's the collective energy. So it's synergy and synthesis and symbiotic. This is all about coming together. And it's, like we said right at the beginning, in real terms, it's simple, but it's not. It's about intentions again. It's having an intention to recognize your own value, to love yourself without ego, and then seeking, what's the connection I can create? And what I think is an interesting point about connections, and I know I've studied this with lots of groups, is a connection doesn't have to be something absolutely positively the same. So I'll give you an example. I used to do this exercise. I said, look, if you're talking to somebody and they talk about, are they been to Portugal, say, and you've never been to Portugal, you can still find a connection, because the connection is that you're interested and you've never been to Portugal and they have. Oh, you might find a connection, say, gosh, I have been to Portugal. Where did you go? So it's really being understanding that we can always find a connection. It's just we don't have to have it tied down in stone. It's an intention to find the connection.
Yeah, and being open to it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh,
it's like, you're called Angel Heart Radio, and everybody's got a heart. So if you think about it, everybody's got the bits inside their body, liver, kidney, whatever. People eat, so you might find connections over food and experiences. You've all had an experience. Have you been on holiday or not been? You can start at the kind of, if you like, the classic conversational pieces. But one of the things I offered to somebody who was looking to actually understand dating a bit different, I said, rather than asking your date about what he does, ask about what does he value? What principles run your life? Because you find out much more about that person by asking that kind of question. What makes you laugh?
Yes.
So it's asking a question that the person can answer, but it's asking it in a way that trips into their easy emotions, and then you find a connection, and then you go forward.
Right. And isn't it interesting that when we ask somebody, who are you? They immediately want to go to that place of what they do. And it's like, I don't want to know what you do. I mean, yeah, I'm interested, but I want to know, what makes you tick? What makes you get up in the morning? What motivates you? What makes you, get out there in the world and do everything that you do? So I'm totally in agreement. That would be a magical conversation, especially in the romantic venue. And finding that partner, it's not so much important about their structure of their life. It's like, what's inside of you?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is understanding the partnership with yourself. I always remember one time my son was asking me for some advice, talking to a girlfriend again, I think, and he said, but I don't know what she's interested in. I said, well, why don't you share what you're interested in, and ask her, you've got to not be a bore and only talk about yourself, but you do also have to be interesting in order to be interested in somebody else. Because there are some times where people, they go, well, I'm just going to be interested in you and not share anything about me. That doesn't work. It's the flow, and just to finish on it, it's a dance. It's a dance. And if you think about when people dance really well, they hear the tune, they learn the steps, but they dance with their soul.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that's different.
And it's a rhythm.
It's a rhythm, and it's a practice. And then you let go.
Yes. Yeah. And it's that letting go that's where we put our limits on ourselves, like just being free You think about that. Free form dancing is something that
Yes.
a lot of people have a problem with because they want the limit, they want the structure. But if you can just let go and just be free, and that's when you're being you.
It is.
And in those magical conversations, I can see how that would come into play. Just be you. Don't worry about what other people are thinking or
Yes.
criticizing or judging. Just be you.
That's right. But it does take practice. I think it's,
Yeah.
I'm aware of that when I've run, we used to run monthly ones in Malaysia, so that it built a momentum, and people didn't always understand it to begin with. And when you do an event type one in the business world, you don't necessarily get to do it all the time. You want to encourage them to do it. But I believe that if people get into the habit of it, they go, hey, let's have another of those magical conversations about this business stuff, instead of the sort of, bullet point one. But recognize that when you get men and women together and they're in a business environment, there are some energies around business that you can get to understand and make business different. That's what I would like. I want to get away from the old traditional, very regulative. I know we need some regulations and compliance. I'm not saying throw everything out, but really understand that business now is about adjusting to the flow. Yes, where are the business opportunities? Where's the cash flow? But it's all about flow. And we've got to let go of the old stuff, which says, no, you have to do it like this. No, you don't have to do it like this. I think business in this decade, we're going to see some phenomenal changes. And not all will be comfortable, but I believe that we are going in the right direction.
Absolutely. So appreciate what you're doing in the world, because this is how change happens.
Yes.
It's the innovators, it's those change makers that have a vision, and then you set about doing it. And that's what you're doing. You are affecting the world in a positive way. So I want to say thank you.
You are too. And I think, we all have the capacity to really tap into our energy and help ripple this energy to the world, a very conscious, loving, compassionate, different type of energy. And as I say, just to recognize differences and love them.
Exactly. Even in ourselves, we recognize things in ourselves that we're not maybe real comfortable with or happy about.
Oh, yes.
But loving it is what changes it. Loving what's inside of you, no matter what that is yes. going to bring it out for you to look at closer. If you push it away and say, oh, I'm not going to look at that, that's kind of ugly, then you're never going to change. It'll always be there. But if you say, I love you, I just love you, and yes. then it comes up in a way that you can really deal with whatever it is.
I think so. And I think the other thing I've really learned is that you never know everything. And that's the joy of really focusing on every day. So yeah, maybe 71, I've got more experience than a 21-year-old, but I still got things to learn. And also sharing wisdom. I talked recently about a wisdom waterfall. Is how do we share wisdom across the generations and across the divides, so that we understand all the issues that are coming up at the moment, and recognizing, yes, there's history, but we're in the now. We need to move forward and create more. We create babies, we create new generations. It's in our power to then flow that wisdom down the ages. And that means getting together, not living in silos and not living too much on.
Yes.
And yes, we have to use technology, and it's really important, but to be careful how we honor the space between us.
Balance. Bring it into balance. Yeah.
Balance, definitely.
Yeah. Pauline, this has been such an amazing conversation with you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And please share with everyone how they can reach out to you if you have events going on, or I want you to mention your book as well.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
just
So
share with us.
my book is Magical Conversations, and it says transforming conflict into collaboration. So it touches on the gender dynamics map, but it's more about the philosophy of all the things I've talked about. And that's on Amazon. So if you look for that on Amazon, I'm on Facebook as Pauline Crawford-Omps, and there's a business page as well. And I also have a website called missmagicalconversations.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as Dr. Pauline Crawford-Omps, and I'd love anybody to connect with me there, and on Facebook. And also I work with people one-to-one. If people would like to solve, I say, if you'd like to solve a difficult situation, a difficult conversation, there are no such things as difficult people, just difficult situations. But what I do is one-to-one, we use the map and we look at where you are on the map. We get to understand the difficulty you're having with somebody else. And that's because of the map, it's easy to find out where they are. And then we can work out a sort of strategy for you to adapt that relationship. Now, what's magic about it is that you don't need the other person in the room, because very often it's our awareness of what the other person is. We cannot change somebody else's behavior, but we can gain an understanding. And I have to say, I have 100% success with this. And usually people come back and say, oh, I solved that one, and I solved this other one as well. I say, that's great. The map is multi-purpose. And
Exactly.
And if anybody, you'll find this online, but this is a very rough version of my map.
Great.
So
yeah,
I guess
definitely would be worth our while to go to the website and check this out.
Check this out. And also I post a lot of things where I put the illustrations out, and I'm running some webinars soon, so keep an eye on my Facebook page. And basically I'll share the map and help you understand where you are in it, so you can understand everybody else. And I have to tell you, it's such good fun. And there's a physicality level to it. And I will soon have another book out, which is about all the detail of the map. But I'm looking for a publisher. So if anybody has a publisher, let me know.
Let's talk after.
Yes. And I would love to, if anybody's really interested in creating those future maps, then I run a monthly gathering called Create Our Future Together, which is currently going to be this Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So if anybody's interested, come along. But that is much more about a magical conversation about the future, not about us as individuals, but it's very exciting to be part of this renaissance. You know, we're into a whole new, wonderful, wonderful world.
Yes. Oh, I am interested in that. So I will definitely talk to you about more information.
So that's it, really. And let's say with social media nowadays, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram, if you can't find me, then you're not looking very well.
Right. Yes. And the thing that we do here at Angel Heart Radio and on Enlightened World Network, which we're streaming simultaneously with, we're on YouTube, we're on Periscope, and we do list the social media contact information for you.
Thank you.
So
great.
anyone that is interested, please just click on one of those links and it'll take you directly to find more about the wonderful Dr. Pauline. I so appreciate you being here.
I do too. And I want everybody to know that we met only last week, and this has been a fantastic, wonderful connection. And that
has. I'm so grateful for meeting you and being on that panel discussion with you, because I just loved everything you were saying and sharing, and I'm like, I got to talk to her.
And likewise. So that's for everybody out there to look for those connections, be aware and open, because you know, you've all got that potential.
Yes, absolutely. So with that, we're going to say goodnight. I have an ending little video from our founder of Angel Heart Radio, Anea Joy Holili, and then we'll be off the air after that. Pauline, thank you. I want to have you back again. I have other shows too, so we're gonna talk.
We'll talk.
But thank you everyone for tuning in tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Blessings to you.
You've been listening to another fabulous program on Angel Heart Radio. Our goal is to remind you of how much you matter in the world and to let you know that we appreciate who you are in the world. You can check out who's on, when we're on, and who our guests are at angelheartradio.com. Everything is there. It's all just one click away. Angel Heart Radio programs are powerful tools to help you in your life and your life experience. They are not intended, nor should they, be used to replace your medical or legal advice.
Powered by love. Angel Heart Radio is brought to you by AngelLight777.com.
The views and opinions expressed by Angel Heart Radio hosts, guests, co-hosts and associates should not be construed as advice from Angel Heart Radio.